Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Shop Vlogs. Today we're doing a quick and dirty rustic picture frame out of Butternut. So I've already designed it. I've already got my measurements for what I need to cut. I've got our piece of Butternut selected. You can see it over here. I have to dust it off because this has been sitting on the shelf for a bit. But before we get started, if you could please leave a like, maybe subscribe, leave a comment what you thought of the video, and a little reminder, our e-shop is open. That's dogsong-woodworks.square.site. We have a couple cutting boards on there, some birdhouses, some flower displays, things like that. More is coming. I just haven't had time to get around to it yet. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. We have some new tools in the shop. One I just bought today. Let me go grab it. I finally replaced the old Harbor Freight jigsaw. It's one of the very few tools that are left. Still get regular use in the shop. The other one being the biscuit joiner, which I haven't gotten a replacement for yet. I haven't needed it in a while because I haven't done too many big glue up panels, but in the future that will be replaced. So we got this, and we also got one more tool. This is not out on the market yet, but it is on Metabo HPT's website, so I'm assuming I can talk about it. This is the N1804DA. This is a 1/4" narrow crown stapler. I have another 1/4" narrow crown stapler. This guy. This is the N3804A5. This is a pneumatic one. This is a cordless one. There's a bit of a weight difference. Ain't nothing wrong with this. I am still using it. It's gotten plenty of use. It will get plenty of use, but it's nice that if I'm just making some shot jigs and fixtures, or for whatever reason I don't feel like taking the air compressor with me and I only need a narrow crown. Yeah, it's a convenience thing. So there will be a dedicated video to this once I find the right project for it. I'm thinking that's going to be used when we redo flush cabinets. I think it'll be a combination of this for the 1/2" plywood or MDF, whatever we end up using, and we'll also use this guy, this PT50. This is a pneumatic T50 stapler. This will be used for the backer boards on the back of the cabinet. Cool, we're up to like 32, 33 tools now that are just Metabo HPT. This thing is rock solid. It ain't going anywhere. In fact, that'll probably still get used more than that. I'm not out of the honeymoon phase with that tool yet, so you probably won't see the 3804 for a little bit. So in the words of the customer, this is supposed to be a rustic looking picture frame. I originally had suggested black walnut, and then I remembered I have like 4 boards of this stuff laying around. This is butternut. Now butternut is kind of an endangered species right now because of the canker. I believe it's a fungus that attacks the trees. Now no live trees were harmed in the acquisition of this lumber. All of the butternut lumber that you see on the market these days are from where arborists have come in and taken down dead trees to prevent the spread of the disease. So it's unfortunate that we're losing the butternut species, but there is a university out there, I can't remember which one, that is developing a variety of butternut tree that is disease resistant. So hopefully they get somewhere with that research, but for now, unfortunately, the only source of butternut that you can really buy, unless you cut down a tree yourself on your own property, is from those dead trees. So I need something like 78.5 inches of this. We're making 1 3/4" picture frame. It's going to hold a it was like a cornflower sack. It's a historic one, I guess, that the customer brought over when they came and visited. This was just a door call. They came while I was out here in the shop and say, hey, we have this thing here. Can you make a picture frame for it? Don't worry, if you follow me on Instagram, hopefully I can persuade them to give me a photo of the picture frame with the thing in it on the wall. So I already feel like I'm talking too much, so I've thrown the Diablo 24 tooth on the table saw. Let's go ahead and rip us a 1 3/4 inch wide section of this. Ooh, that was some hard work. That's enough table saw for me for one day. Gotta love these tiny little projects. So if you're curious about butternut as a potential species of lumber for your woodworking projects, there are a couple things you want to keep in mind before you do that. Number one, butternut is in the same genus as black walnut. However, it does not go for the same price that black walnut does. This is usually a pretty affordable species to work with. Unfortunately, it is also very soft. It is about as soft as pine. I don't know what the exact Yanka hardness is. If I can be bothered to while editing this, I'll look it up and put it on the screen for you. Here-ish. So I would not use this for furniture making. It is also not very dimensionally stable like something like red oak would be. It's not terrible, but it's not the greatest. A lot of the lumber you find will have some sort of discoloration or wormholes in it that you'll constantly have to fill while you're building your project. I'm actually going to grab the one Bosch tool that I have left, that corded electric hand plane. Yeah, let's grab the electric hand plane and just shave off maybe a 1/16 off of this thing. I don't want it to be a super chunky picture frame. Quick little FYI, I was going to use my NP50A because it can shoot pin nails, but because there's no other joint reinforcement in this, I was going to see with some pieces of scrap wood if I could get away with using this 15 gauge here. It does have a Nomar tip on it, so I want to see how these nails deal with different directions of grain. So we're just going to take the pieces that I used when I calibrated my miter saw. See how it works. I'm not entirely sure I have a filler that's the color of butternut though. I might. I don't know for sure. Let's see. This will give us a chance to calibrate the depth too. I run about 110 psi. It's strong, that's for sure. I'm gonna say hell yes, this can be used for that. Stuff is very old and dry. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. Use a 15 gauge instead of the 23 gauge. This is a much stronger nail than this is. I am going to clamp these up a little different when I go to actually do that. But so here are the first two holes. There's my thumb for scale. And I'm going to check this and see what color this dries to when it's dry. Make sure it'll actually match the butternut that we're working with. Okay, so here's how we're doing this. I'm going to take this leftover piece to use as a clamping block to keep these flush-ish. If they're a little off, that's okay. I'll just sand them. And then we're going to use Titebond Speed Set. I'm mainly using because this is clear, it's not a brown color. So we're going to just take a little bit. But the main reason I wanted to use the 15 gauge is it's less likely to deviate from where it's being shot in, even though that's a 2.5 inch nail. And that's not a very wide target, so yeah. I should add here that my main concern is the nail deviating and going either outside along the edge or inside where the backer and the plexiglass are supposed to ride, and that would be very difficult to correct, especially with a soft wood like butternut. But the other main reason I used the 15 gauge to do this instead of the 23 gauge is the 23 gauge is much more prone to deviation than a 15 gauge nail. Hope that helps. Take our 15 gauge. Keep it level. Beautiful. That is definitely sandable. So I'm going to let this set for about 15-20 minutes, then I'll come back and attach these two halves together. This is a fantastic, I'd say a little nail gun, but it's kind of like almost the size of a framing gun. But a lot of people think 15 gauges really aren't useful for fine woodworking. And I think we've proven that notion wrong, because we can definitely fill that. And these wormholes, we want to keep these because she wants a rustic looking picture frame. So yeah, I just used a 1/8 inch round over bit by Diablo to smooth the edges out a little bit. So while we're waiting for this to tack up, I'm going to go cut the piece of plywood, and we'll apply the aged wood accelerator to that. So the product I'm going to be using for this is a Varathane product. This is aged wood accelerator. Basically what this is, there's a couple enzymes in here that will react with the wood and give it that weathered look. I don't know if you've ever seen like a 2x4 or something that's been left out in the rain for a couple years, how it kind of turns gray. That's pretty much what this does. So it's going to go on and it's going to turn dark brown for a little bit. And I'll wipe off the excess, and after about 15-20 minutes it'll turn gray. Now if I were applying a stain to this, I would want to use pre-stain conditioner. As much as people foo-foo it, it does work and it does make troublesome woods like Baltic birch much easier to stain. Try and even out our color here. Stuff evens out pretty nicely so long as you're quick. Here's a quick little time lapse of it drying over 15-20 minutes. I kind of needed the camera after this. I was going to let it sit on time lapse for that, but I wanted to show you guys me cutting acrylic. You can cut acrylic with a table saw. You just need to use a high blade count. And I'm going to use this little Euro style fence here for this. I gotta use the Euro fence for this because the regular fence has a slight gap on the underside and it's just thin enough for the acrylic to slide under. In case you're wondering what this is a construction calculator, Project Calc. We've calculated, Calculated Industries makes this, so it's the same company that makes the Construction Master and Material Estimator calculators. It's just a nice way to not make an expensive mistake. This is acrylic. $17. So normally with a table saw clip, I would put the volume at the lowest setting and just let it roll like that, but acrylic makes kind of a horrible noise when you cut it, so I'll spare you guys and mute the clip. But basically I'm going nice and slow. This is an 80 tooth blade, and the main concern here is you don't want it to catch or chip out or do anything like that. As long as you go slow and take your time and apply a little bit of downward pressure towards the front edge of the blade, you'll be fine. I should warn you though, the smell is rather horrific. That's not the cleanest edge in the world, but it does work. It also smells freaking horrific. Alright, let's take this over to the miter saw. This is such an Etsy type project, isn't it? This is so out of the realm of what I usually do. Alright, now all of you DIYers, yes, I'm looking at you. I want you to pay attention to what I say here in these next couple clips, because cutting acrylic comes with its own unique challenges and dangers. And I really should have been wearing eye protection at the time I did this. Luckily I got away with it. I don't know what I was thinking, but you could be one of the people that never wears eye protection, but when you do this with acrylic, please wear eye protection. And especially pay attention to the technique I'm using here. It's very important you do it this way, or you could end up having an accident. Now, when you cut acrylic on a miter saw, you actually kind of want to treat this like a radial arm saw, because you don't want the hook angle of this miter saw blade to grab this acrylic and pull it up. This stuff isn't really strong enough to resist that. You also get a cleaner cut going backwards. This is the, man, I would love, I'm not really a teacher, but I would love to teach a class on dealing with stuff like this, because this is, it's not so far out of the normal realm of woodworking, but it's not stuff you're going to find on like Woodworking Web or something like that, even though I love Colin Connect. By the way, Colin, if you ever find this video, hi. Where did I find his videos? I don't even remember. I know the latest one I watched was like the oscillating multi-tool tricks. Stuff like that. I also wanted to really quickly explain why I went backwards. So when you're using a sliding miter saw normally, your teeth are actually, because the blade is spinning this way, the front edge of the miter blade is the one that's actually doing the cutting. Now normally this isn't a problem because wood is pretty stiff. But since it's cutting on the upstroke, it is technically pulling or trying to pull the material up with it. Now because material, this acrylic or perspex, whatever you want to call it, is really flimsy and bendy, if you were to try and cut a long piece like this, it might try and lift this front corner up, causing a bind, and then it would just shatter this entire sheet and throw stuff into your eyes. Now, when you cut backwards with one of these, and the only material you should do that with is something like perspex or acrylic, it's actually cutting on the downstroke and it's pushing the material down onto the throat plate so that binding action can't happen. So, one risk you want to keep in mind, because all sliding miter saws have some sort of left and right slop, there is technically still a risk that the front edge of this blade could catch the middle of your acrylic and pull it up. So that's something you want to keep in mind. They do make dedicated tools for cutting this. It's kind of like a glass cutter kind of deal, and those are a much safer option, but I've never had, take this for what it's worth, I've never had the rear of the blade catch on one of these while doing this. So, if you're going to do this, I know I wasn't wearing them, but I really should have been. Wear some safety glasses, or even better, a full like face shield, because you run into some risks working with the stuff that you don't normally have to deal with when you're running wood. So, just something to keep in mind. That is by far the nicest mitered frame I have ever made in my life. Okay, so I know that looks quite a bit darker than the butternut, but when it dries it actually matches color very nicely. This, and when this dries, I won't sand all of it off. I'll use a chisel to get the majority of it at first. But as far as this thing goes, I am very happy with it. This no mar tip is amazing. Butternut is such a soft wood, and it didn't leave any marks at all. So. Awesome. I'm going to take the tip off, and the tip stores back here in this little thing. For most of what I use this for, or at least lately, it doesn't require the tip. So, yeah. Let's check on one more thing, because this should be dry. Here's our backer board, and by the time I get the Danish oil on the picture frame, this will have grayed even more than this. So this will be the back part that that bag that she wants to put in the frame will actually rest against. So you'll only see like the very outside edge of this. But yeah, this is turning out rather nicely. So the next project after that is this. I alluded to it beforehand, I think, but this is about 100 board foot of hard maple that I have to plane down. This will be a butcher's block countertop for a customer in Millbury, Ohio. I'm very excited to do that. This is the first time I've actually worked with proper hard maple instead of just ambrosia. So these are all going to get ripped to about 1 9/16, maybe a little bit more than that, and then glued up in a big panel. That'll be the project after this one. So the next thing you guys will see probably is me sanding this, and that will be later for me, but you'll see it in the next couple seconds. I'm going to leave the front and back film on this until she comes to pick this up. And yeah, I get to see you in literally a second. I've got it all sanded up. I've got all the debris blown out of these wormholes. So now I'm going to, we're up to finish at this point. But before I get to finish, I want to drill the holes for the retainers, as well as the sawtooth hanger. I'm not going to install them. I'll do that when they come to pick it up. But I did want to show you guys basically how this works. We've got our piece of acrylic right here. It's still got the protective film on it. I'll take that off when they get here. That goes in here. Then you put whatever you're trying to display in here. We've got our piece of 1/4 inch Baltic birch plywood that has been aged. That's how this looks now. It's been aged with very thin aged wood accelerator. And that sandwiches your display item between the acrylic and the backer. So you've got a nice display. This is much cleaner underneath this film, but you've seen her in reels, but stop struggling. She lets me pet her and pick her up. This is Willow. She's a Buckeye. She's so old she doesn't even lay eggs. Useless freeloader. Buck. So we have two drills here. This smaller guy, this is the DS18DEX, like I said. This bigger guy is the DS18DC. So this is a bigger drill. It's 18 volt, but I usually run it on the 5 amp hour multi-volt. This comes with a offset handle. These both come in hammer drill versions. I have the regular ones because these are both sample review program ones. I don't necessarily have the biggest choice of what I get in that program, but basically all I get to say is, am I interested in said specific tool, and I'm never going to not say yes to, drills. I went 3 years without having quality cordless drills. What this one gets used for is stuff like you saw me do here today, the smaller stuff. I'll use it for drilling pilot holes for screws, for putting countersinks, for screw holes, things like that. This bigger guy has twice the power, almost exactly, that this smaller guy has. Now this is not a weak drill by any means, but this thing has so much power behind it that it really, really helps. And it's also heavier. So let's say I was going to do a bunch of pocket holes in one day. I would probably choose the DEX over the DC. But if I had a bunch of, let's say 31 millimeter holes for some concealed cabinet hinges, and I had a bunch of that to do, or I had a bunch of Forstner bit work to do, or spattle bits, whatever, general construction type things, this drill is going to get used because it's just that much more powerful, and it handles bigger loads better because it's got a lot more power in reserve. But This thing will do almost anything that this will do. It's just this will do it so much faster. But if you don't need all the power and you'd like to save some weight, this is a nice option. Anyways, now that I've done this, I'm gonna go brush it off and we're gonna put some Danish oil on this. Finally to the end of the video. Thank you for watching so far. Danish oil is one of those finishes where you need to be careful of how you deal with the rags afterwards. Right now, I'll just leave this like that. When I come back in 10 minutes to put another coat on, I will take this and I'll drape it over the edge of a trash can. So, thanks for watching.